Hello, this is Applications of Human Systems in TV. I am Katie Cornelius, and I chose The Office. My bibliography has the different sources that I used. Now, getting into the nitty-gritty. The Office is a mock documentary. It was shown on NBC, and it was from 2005 to 2013 on a group of typical office workers at a branch of Dunder Mifflin Paper Company in Scranton, Pennsylvania. The workday consists of ego clashes, inappropriate behavior, tedium, and romance. The series follows different managers, various leadership styles, and never-ending change. Who am I, and why share my opinion? I'm Katie Cornelius, first semester Organizational Workforce and Leadership graduate student. I have seen this series multiple times since it originated in 2005. I knew that the characters would be amazing to analyze with the new skills and knowledge I've gotten from this course. Complex adaptive systems at work. Otherwise known as CAS, they are made up of interacting adaptive agents. These adaptive agents are the people, departments, and processes that evolve over time. These systems are decentralized, nonlinear, self-organizing, sensitive to initial conditions like small changes can have big effects, capable of emergent behavior. So how does this relate to the series? Let's dive into that. Meet the team, otherwise known as our adaptive agents. We have regional manager Michael Scott. He is our fearless leader, complete with his coffee mug that he purchased himself. Michael started his career as a skilled salesperson and is now the mid-level manager of a regional paper company, Dunder Mifflin. He is one of the most disruptive characters while also encouraging his team in the most unusual ways. This character is an unusual boss in that he is often seeking approval from his subordinates. Next, we have assistant to the regional manager, Dwight Schrute. Dwight is a wildly dedicated employee and eager to earn favoritism from his boss, Michael. He takes his role very seriously and is ready to show his dedication despite shenanigans with his coworkers. This doesn't mean Dwight is impervious from those antics, even forming an alliance with Jim in season 1 to avoid corporate downsizing. Next, we have salesperson Jim Halpert. In the first season of this series, Jim shares a very apathetic approach to his role in sales at Dunder Mifflin. I believe there's a quote that he says early on that's about if he took this job more seriously, then that would mean it was his career, and he didn't want that. This is very clearly shown in some of the antics he pulls on coworker Dwight. One of the very first episodes has him hiding Dwight's stapler in a Jell-O mold. There are some times throughout the first season where Jim is motivated to work, which is possibly because of the romantic interest with Pam. And last but not least, we have receptionist Pam Beasley. She's the lifeblood of the office. Pam is the one with the pulse on what is going on within Dunder Mifflin. She is also the romantic interest for our salesman Jim that provides intrigue of a will they, won't they dynamic that pulls the audience in. Adaptive agents continued. So every employee within Dunder Mifflin is an individual agent with unique personalities, goals, and reactions. A great example of this would be when Phyllis makes Karen over in season 3 to accommodate the client style in order to make a sale. Each of the sales team have their own methods and dynamics and adapt to their clients and office dynamics in real time. I also think that Toby Flenderson, Dunder Mifflin's human resources representative, provides an opposite energy to Michael's office antics, helping the office to stay in a state of equilibrium. Toby's department is independent from the sales or other teams, but still works within the company with those teams involved. And that goes back to what Ariveo said about the interpersonal skills that are needed within teams. Emergence in the office. Office pranks are helpful for culture. So the pranks that Jim plays on Dwight are so typical to the dynamics within the office that most of the other coworkers don't even pay attention to them. These antics are not formally established, but they become something that is able to support the team with a common way to let off steam and build rapport. You can see it when Jim impersonates Dwight, and even when Jim decides to hide Dwight's desk and pretend to wrap it. And like I mentioned in the last slide about the stapler in the Jell-O mold. The party planning committee is also another good option. It shows teamwork, and it's another good example of something that occurs regularly, but it does not have an official status within the organization. We see several different staff members on the committee at various times and with different capacities each time. You can also see the diversity in the group as each contributor comes from a different background, as referred to in Sullivan. So Angela is coming from accounting, Pam is coming from reception, and Phyllis is coming from sales. I like to refer to these roles as the other duties as assigned roles that often teams get volunteered to assist with. Complex responsive processes. Now, what about the CRP, which focuses more on conversations, relationships, and human interactions as the core drivers of organizational change and behavior? This changes the thinking from the organization being thought of like a machine and more about the constant recreation through day-to-day interactions. As we can see here, the staff collectively working together in the later seasons. I believe this is from season 8 or 9, and Oscar is giving a pep talk to someone online, and the entire office joins in. Power is relational, not hierarchical. Complex responsive processes sees power as something that flows through relationships and dialogue, not just through formal roles. An example of this in the office could be Dwight's formal title being assistant to the regional manager, but his actual influence depends on who's listening to him, how others respond, and how he navigates the relationships. Very rarely seen Jim and Dwight working together on things. Identity co-created in real time. One of the prime examples that came to mind was evolution. So people's identities are not fixed. They're formed in interactions with others. A prime example of that would be the evolution of Ryan Howard. So in the very first season, he starts off as a temp in business school, and then he moves on to become a hotshot vice president, outshining his mentor, Michael. Then he is a failed entrepreneur and finally comes full circle back to his original role of temp. I think this is a great representation of what Stacy and his colleagues referred to about being unable to form goals and action plans without at the same time being influenced by their environment. No central control, only ongoing interaction. In CRP, no one person truly controls the organization. Instead, change emerges unpredictably from ongoing interaction. Michael Scott is proof of this. He thinks that he is in charge, but the office often works around him. The group dynamics shift constantly based on how people respond to each other, not because someone, quote unquote, manages it. The fact that the office stays relatively functional despite Michael's chaotic leadership shows how local relationships and responsiveness keep the place running. The episode that shows this the most is when Michael falls asleep after eating an entire family-sized chicken pot pie, and the entire office works together to pull a prank on Michael by changing the clocks and all leaving a little bit early. Exclusion versus inclusion. Is inclusion really that big a deal? This point has been a common theme throughout the series, with Michael constantly seeking the inclusion from the rest of the team. This follows along with Bernstein's research about the connection between people being included or excluded, and how their needs and moods can change based on those factors. The most evident form of this would be probably in season 2. There's an episode titled Email Surveillance, where Michael is so desperate to be a part of the group that he eventually crashes Jim's house party that he wasn't invited to. And you can see in the bottom photo that Jim ends up working with Michael and singing with him to make him feel more included. So, in conclusion, while some of the messages from the show have not aged as well as others, The Office is great at illustrating both complex responsive processes as well as complex adaptive systems. The Office is not about structure, but instead the messy, human, in the moment interactions that define how work really gets done. So again, my name is Katie Cornelius. Thank you. This was The Office as an application of human systems.